Under the gleaming lights of the luxury boutique, she stood at the counter, her heart racing. The air was thick with whispers as she placed the elegant black dress on the counter. The store, filled with high-end shoppers, fell into an uncomfortable silence. The woman, poised and confident, was met with an unexpected gaze, a sharp, judgmental look from the sales associate. "I'm sorry, but this isn't for you." She heard the words, though they felt like a punch to the gut. For a moment, everything froze. The room was silent, her identity, her presence, questioned. How could this happen in a place of luxury? Amara Johnson wasn't a stranger to hard work. Born and raised in a modest neighborhood of Detroit, she had always been surrounded by stories of perseverance. Her mother, a retired school teacher, and her father, a factory worker, had instilled in her the value of resilience from an early age. Amara wasn't the type to back down from a challenge, even when life seemed determined to throw obstacles in her path. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, but she quickly earned the title of the family's problem solver, a title that came with both pride and pressure. From a young age, Amara had an eye for fashion. While her friends collected dolls and toys, she spent her weekends sketching dresses and suits in a spiral notebook she bought from the local dollar store. "One day," she would tell anyone who cared to listen, "I'll create designs that people from all walks of life can wear proudly." Her dreams were big, but her determination was even bigger. After graduating high school as the valedictorian, Amara pursued her degree in fashion design. It wasn't easy. Between juggling part-time jobs to pay for tuition and trying to keep up with her demanding coursework, she often found herself wondering if the struggle was worth it. But deep down, she knew the answer. Her love for creating something beautiful out of nothing pushed her forward. Her most prized possession was an old Singer sewing machine gifted by her grandmother. It had seen better days, but Amara's careful hands made it come alive. Through countless hours of practice, she transformed fabric scraps into wearable art. Her passion earned her recognition at local events, and soon her talent became a beacon of hope for others in her community. "You're going to make it big one day," her best friend Naomi would say with a grin. "And when you do, don't forget about us small folks." But Amara's journey was far from smooth. As a young black woman trying to carve a space for herself in the competitive fashion industry, she faced her fair share of roadblocks. There were moments when her confidence wavered, moments when she felt invisible in a world that seemed to cater to everyone but her. Yet she refused to let those moments define her. She channeled her frustrations into her work, pouring her heart into every design. By her late 20s, Amara had built a small but loyal clientele. Her creations were worn by professionals, brides, and even local celebrities. Still, she dreamed of taking her career to the next level. She wanted to walk into a room and see her designs displayed alongside names like Chanel and Versace. For Amara, fashion wasn't just about clothes. It was about storytelling, identity, and reclaiming spaces that had historically excluded people like her. Despite her accomplishments, Amara remained grounded. She was a community mentor, often hosting free workshops for aspiring designers who couldn't afford traditional schooling. She believed in lifting others as she climbed, a value deeply rooted in her upbringing. "When one of us wins, we all win," she'd say, her voice filled with conviction. Amara's vulnerability lay in her deep desire to belong. No matter how far she'd come, she often felt the sting of not being seen for who she truly was. Her outward confidence masked an inner dialogue filled with doubt. Was she enough? Did she have what it took to thrive in a world that often dismissed her talents before even giving her a chance? That vulnerability came to the forefront the day she stepped into Maison Étoile, a high-end boutique in the heart of New York City. Amara had traveled to the city for a networking event, and though her schedule was packed, she couldn't resist stopping by the iconic store. She had admired its sleek designs from afar, often studying their techniques to refine her own craft. It was a bucket list moment, walking through those glass doors surrounded by luxury. Dressed in a simple, tailored suit of her own design, Amara felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She wasn't there to buy anything extravagant. She simply wanted to experience the space that had inspired her for years. As she ran her fingers over a rack of silk dresses, her mind raced with ideas. This wasn't just fashion. It was art. And one day, she thought, her own designs would hold the same kind of magic. But her reverie was interrupted by the cold, calculating stare of a sales associate. Amara noticed the look almost instantly, a subtle yet unmistakable shift in demeanor. At first, she tried to brush it off. Maybe it wasn't personal. Maybe the associate was just having a bad day. But as Amara moved through the store, the tension in the air became harder to ignore. She caught the faint murmur of voices, the sidelong glances that seemed to follow her every step. Still, Amara held her head high. She wasn't about to let anyone make her feel small, not here, not now. When she found a simple black dress that caught her eye, she decided to try it on. It was elegant, timeless, everything she aspired her own designs to be. With a nervous smile, she approached the counter, unaware of the storm brewing just ahead. As Amara approached the counter with the black dress delicately draped over her arm, she felt a sense of quiet pride. This was more than just a dress. It was a glimpse into the world she had spent her entire career dreaming of. But the moment she stepped forward, the atmosphere shifted. The sales associate, a tall woman with impeccably styled hair and a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked Amara up and down with thinly veiled skepticism. "Are you sure you're in the right section?" the woman asked, her tone as smooth as silk but carrying a sharp edge. Amara blinked, momentarily thrown off by the question. "Excuse me?" she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The associate gestured toward a rack at the far corner of the boutique. "Our more affordable options are over there," she said, emphasizing the word affordable as though it were an insult. Around them, a few other shoppers paused, their curiosity piqued by the exchange. Amara's cheeks burned. She glanced down at her tailored suit, her own design, and then back at the associate. "I'd like to try this on," she said, her voice firm but calm. She refused to let the woman's words deter her. But as the associate hesitated, Amara could see the flicker of judgment in her eyes. "I'm sorry," the associate said finally, her tone clipped, "but we reserve the fitting rooms for serious buyers." The words hung in the air, heavy and cutting. Amara felt as though the ground beneath her had shifted. "And what makes you think I'm not serious?" she asked, her voice tinged with incredulity. The associate's smile faltered for a moment before she recovered. "It's just policy," she said with a shrug, though the implication in her voice was clear. Amara felt the weight of every gaze in the room pressing down on her, a silent jury passing judgment on whether or not she belonged. This wasn't the first time Amara had faced prejudice. She had encountered it in boardrooms, at networking events, even in casual conversations with people who claimed to mean well. But this moment stung in a way she hadn't anticipated. Here she was, in a space dedicated to celebrating artistry and innovation, being reduced to nothing more than a stereotype. As she stood there, the humiliation and anger bubbling beneath the surface, Amara thought about all the times she had been told she didn't belong. She thought about her childhood, about the times her teachers had underestimated her abilities, about the nights she had spent doubting herself because the world seemed determined to remind her of her place. This moment wasn't just about a dress or a store. It was about the countless ways she had been made to feel invisible. But Amara wasn't invisible. She was a designer, an artist, a trailblazer in her own right, and she refused to let this moment define her. With a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and met the associate's gaze head-on. "I'll take the dress," she said, her voice steady. The associate blinked, clearly caught off guard. "I'll need your credit card first," she said, the challenge in her tone unmistakable. Amara reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. She placed her black card, a symbol of her success and resilience, on the counter. The associate's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise with a forced smile. "I'll ring this up for you," she said, her tone noticeably softer. As the transaction was completed, Amara felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion. She had won this small battle, but at what cost? The humiliation lingered, a reminder of the barriers she still faced despite all she had achieved. Walking out of the store, Amara felt the weight of the moment settle over her. It wasn't just about her, this was a reflection of a much larger issue. How many others had been treated the same way, dismissed and judged based on nothing more than appearance? How many had walked away feeling like they didn't belong? Over the next few days, the experience replayed in Amara's mind. She couldn't shake the memory of the associate's condescending tone, the way the other shoppers had looked at her. But instead of allowing the moment to consume her, Amara decided to channel her frustration into action. She began sketching a new collection, one inspired by the idea of visibility and inclusion. She wanted to create designs that celebrated individuality, that reminded people of their worth, regardless of how the world chose to see them. Each piece she created carried a story of resilience, of defiance, of refusing to be erased. Amara also decided to share her experience publicly. In a heartfelt post on social media, she recounted what had happened at the boutique, not to seek sympathy, but to shed light on an issue that was far too common. "This isn't just about me," she wrote. "It's about all the ways we're told we don't belong, about the spaces that are designed to exclude us, but we do belong, and it's time we remind the world of that." The post quickly went viral, resonating with people from all walks of life. Messages of support poured in, along with stories from others who had faced similar experiences. Amara's words had struck a chord, igniting a conversation about representation and the need for change in industries that had long been dominated by exclusivity. But with the support also came criticism. Some accused Amara of overreacting, of reading too much into the situation. Others dismissed her story entirely, suggesting that she was just looking for attention. These responses stung, but they also reinforced the importance of her message. If people were this quick to dismiss her experience, how many others had been silenced or ignored? Amara knew she couldn't change the world overnight, but she was determined to do her part. She continued to speak out, using her platform to advocate for inclusivity and diversity in fashion and beyond. And as her new collection began to take shape, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about proving a point, it was about creating a legacy. Amara wanted to build a world where no one had to question whether they belonged, where artistry and innovation were celebrated without prejudice. And as she worked tirelessly on her designs, she realized that the conflict she had faced wasn't a setback. It was a catalyst for something greater. Amara's social media post about the boutique incident continued to gain traction, creating ripples far beyond her immediate circle. Her inbox overflowed with messages, some offering support, others sharing similar experiences, and a few questioning why she felt the need to speak out at all. Despite the mixed responses, Amara remained resolute. She had opened a door that couldn't be closed, and she was determined to walk through it with purpose. To transform her frustration into something tangible, Amara doubled down on her work. Her new collection, aptly named Unapologetically Seen, was an homage to individuality, self-expression, and breaking barriers. Each piece in the collection carried an intentional message: bold cuts, vibrant patterns, and intricate details that celebrated diversity. Amara wanted every design to tell a story, not just hers, but of anyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. As her sketches began to materialize into physical garments, Amara realized she couldn't do this alone. She reached out to her best friend and confidant, Naomi, who had always been her biggest cheerleader. Naomi, a marketing expert with a knack for storytelling, immediately saw the potential in Amara's vision. "We're not just launching a collection," Naomi said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "We're starting a movement." Together, they began planning a showcase unlike anything Amara had done before. The goal wasn't just to sell clothes, it was to create an experience that resonated on a deeper level. They decided to hold the event in Detroit, a nod to Amara's roots and a city known for its resilience and creativity. Naomi suggested incorporating local artists and performers to make the showcase a community celebration, but as plans for the event began to take shape, so did the challenges. Securing funding proved to be an uphill battle. Many investors were hesitant to back a collection that deviated so boldly from industry norms. "It's too risky," one potential sponsor said during a pitch meeting. "This kind of messaging might alienate certain audiences." Amara felt the familiar sting of rejection, but Naomi refused to let her wallow. "They don't see the bigger picture yet," Naomi said firmly, "but we do, and that's all that matters." With limited resources, Amara and Naomi turned to crowdfunding. They launched a campaign with a heartfelt video that shared Amara's story, her vision for the collection, and her desire to make the fashion industry more inclusive. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the country, many of whom had been inspired by Amara's earlier post, rallied behind her. The campaign surpassed its initial goal within days, proving that her message had struck a chord. Buoyed by the support, Amara threw herself into the final stages of preparation. She brought on a small team of seamstresses, including Maria, a single mother who had lost her job during the pandemic, and Jada, a young designer who reminded Amara of herself when she was starting out. Together, they worked tirelessly, stitching late into the night and sharing stories over cups of strong coffee. One evening, as they were fitting a model for one of the show's centerpiece dresses, Amara felt a pang of doubt. "What if this isn't enough?" she murmured, her voice barely audible. Maria looked up from her sewing machine and smiled warmly. "Amara, you've already done more than enough. You've given people like me a chance to believe in ourselves again. That's more than any dress could ever do." Maria's words stayed with Amara as the showcase approached. She realized that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about the ripple effects of her work, the lives she touched along the way. The night of the event arrived faster than she anticipated. The venue, a converted warehouse adorned with string lights and art installations, buzzed with anticipation. Guests from all walks of life filled the space, local community members, industry professionals, and even a few familiar faces from social media who had traveled miles to witness the show. Naomi took charge of the evening's proceedings, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Meanwhile, Amara hovered backstage, her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. As she adjusted a model's hemline, Jada appeared at her side. "They're ready for you," she said with a grin. "And by the way, you're going to crush this." The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. The show began with a spoken-word performance by a local poet, whose powerful verses set the tone for the evening. Then, one by one, the models began walking the runway, each garment telling its own story. The audience reacted with audible gasps, murmurs of appreciation, and bursts of applause. Amara watched from the wings, her breath catching as she saw her vision come to life. She thought about everything it had taken to reach this moment, the struggles, the setbacks, the doubts. But none of it mattered now. What mattered was the energy in the room, the way people connected with her work on a level that transcended fashion. Halfway through the show, a familiar face caught Amara's attention. Sitting in the front row was a woman she hadn't expected to see, the sales associate from Maison Étoile. Dressed impeccably and flanked by two colleagues, she watched the show with rapt attention. Amara's heart raced, but she quickly pushed the thought aside. Tonight wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about celebrating what she had created. The finale brought the audience to their feet. The last model, draped in the collection's most intricate design, walked the runway with confidence and grace. As the applause swelled, Amara stepped out onto the stage, overwhelmed by the standing ovation. Naomi joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "I told you," she whispered. "You've started something bigger than you ever imagined." But as Amara looked out at the sea of faces, she knew the journey wasn't over. This was only the beginning of something much larger, a movement that would challenge the status quo and create space for stories like hers to be heard. The finale of the show was unforgettable. The last model, adorned in Amara's most ambitious piece, a gown that blended modern structure with traditional African patterns, stepped onto the runway. The dress was a masterpiece, with vibrant hues of gold, deep indigos, and fiery reds woven into intricate designs that celebrated culture and individuality. A hush fell over the room as the model glided forward, each step resonating with purpose. Amara stood backstage, her hands clasped tightly, her heart pounding in rhythm with the music. This was it. The culmination of months of effort, of years of dreaming, and a lifetime of overcoming doubt. As the applause began to swell, Amara felt her eyes prick with tears. She stepped forward, ready to join the model for the final bow, when a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Johnson!" The sales associate from Maison Étoile was suddenly backstage, having made her way past security. Her perfectly polished exterior seemed slightly disheveled, a sign of her hurried determination. Amara froze, unsure of what to expect. The woman's demeanor was a stark contrast to their last interaction. She wasn't here to condescend. Her expression carried a mix of awe and hesitation. I wanted to apologize," the associate stammered, her voice barely audible over the roaring applause. "For how I treated you that day. I misjudged you, and I was wrong. This is extraordinary." She gestured toward the stage, where the audience was now on their feet, cheering wildly. Amara stared at her for a moment, the memories of that humiliating day rushing back. The words she had wanted to say then, words filled with anger and hurt, sat on the tip of her tongue. But as she looked at the woman, she realized something. This wasn't about proving herself to one person or seeking validation from those who had doubted her. She had already proven herself to the only person who mattered, herself. "Thank you," Amara said simply, her voice steady. The woman nodded, her expression a mix of relief and respect, before slipping back into the crowd. Stepping onto the stage, Amara was met with an overwhelming wave of emotion. The room erupted in applause as she walked down the runway, stopping in the center to take her final bow. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment that felt like a scene from a dream. But it was the faces in the crowd that struck her the most. Young designers with stars in their eyes, community members who had supported her from the beginning, and even strangers who had come to celebrate her vision. Naomi joined her on stage, grabbing her hand and raising it triumphantly. "This is Amara Johnson," she announced to the crowd, her voice full of pride. "The future of fashion." The applause grew louder, but as Amara looked out into the crowd, she felt a profound sense of clarity. This wasn't just about fashion. It was about breaking barriers, challenging norms, and creating a world where everyone could see themselves represented. After the show, the media frenzy began. Reporters swarmed Amara, eager to hear her story. Fashion bloggers hailed the collection as revolutionary, while prominent designers publicly praised her work. Offers for collaborations and partnerships poured in, each one validating the years of effort she had poured into her craft. But amidst the whirlwind, Amara remained grounded. She didn't want to lose sight of why she had started this journey in the first place. The immediate impact of the showcase was undeniable. Sales of her collection skyrocketed, with pre-orders flooding in from across the globe. Her designs weren't just being worn, they were sparking conversations. Social media buzzed with posts about her show, with hashtags like #unapologetically, Scene, and Amara Johnson trending for days. People shared their own stories of overcoming prejudice and finding their place in spaces that once excluded them. But the long-term consequences were even more profound. Amara's success opened doors for others who had been overlooked by the fashion industry. Her story became a beacon of hope for aspiring designers, particularly those from marginalized communities. She was invited to speak at industry panels and universities, where she shared her journey and emphasized the importance of creating inclusive spaces. One of the most emotional moments came when Amara received a letter from a young girl named Zuri. "Dear Ms. Johnson," it read, "I saw your show online and it made me believe I can do anything. Thank you for showing girls like me that we belong." Amara kept the letter on her desk as a reminder of the impact she was making. Yet the path wasn't without its challenges. As her profile grew, so did the scrutiny. Critics questioned whether her success was a fleeting moment in a trend-driven industry. Competitors tried to replicate her designs without understanding the cultural significance behind them. But Amara faced these obstacles with the same determination that had carried her through the boutique incident. She knew that change wasn't easy, but it was necessary. In the months following the showcase, Amara launched an initiative to support underrepresented designers. She created scholarships, mentorship programs, and workshops aimed at providing resources and opportunities to those who lacked access to the industry. The initiative was named Threads of Change, a nod to the idea that every small act could contribute to a larger movement. As Amara reflected on her journey, she realized how far she had come, not just as a designer, but as a person. The boutique incident, which had once felt like a moment of defeat, had become a turning point. It had pushed her to confront her fears, to stand up for herself, and to create something truly meaningful. One evening, as she sat in her studio sketching her next collection, Amara glanced at the dress she had purchased from Maison Étoile. It hung on a mannequin in the corner, untouched since the day she brought it home. For a moment, she considered packing it away, but then she stopped. That dress wasn't just a reminder of the pain she had endured. It was a symbol of her resilience, her ability to rise above the doubts and judgments of others. Smiling to herself, Amara added the final touches to her sketch. Her next collection would be called Emerge. It would celebrate growth, transformation, and the power of reclaiming one's narrative. And as she worked late into the night, surrounded by fabric and thread, she knew that her story was far from over. In the weeks following her groundbreaking fashion showcase, Amara Johnson found herself at the center of a whirlwind she had never anticipated. What started as a dream to create a small but meaningful collection had blossomed into a movement. The impact of her work rippled far beyond the fashion industry, inspiring countless individuals to embrace their identities and challenge the barriers that had been placed before them. Amara's studio, once a humble workspace with a single sewing machine, had transformed into a bustling hub of creativity and collaboration. Designers, artists, and storytellers from diverse backgrounds came together under her guidance, eager to contribute to her vision. "This isn't just my success," Amara often reminded her team. "It's ours. Every thread, every stitch, every idea, it's all part of something bigger." One of the most profound changes in Amara's life was the newfound confidence she carried with her. For years, she had quietly navigated the complexities of her identity in an industry that often felt unwelcoming. But now, she stood tall, unapologetically owning her space and using her platform to uplift others. The young girl who once doubted her worth had become a woman whose name was synonymous with resilience and innovation. Her initiative, Threads of Change, quickly gained traction, attracting attention from media outlets, industry leaders, and community organizations. Through scholarships and mentorship programs, Amara gave emerging designers the tools and support they needed to succeed. Many of these young talents came from underprivileged backgrounds, and for them, Amara's program was more than an opportunity. It was a lifeline. One designer, a soft-spoken teenager named Malik, stood out among the mentees. He came from a small town in Mississippi and had taught himself to sew using scraps of fabric his mother collected from thrift stores. When Malik joined Amara's program, he was shy and uncertain, his talent hidden behind layers of self-doubt. But under Amara's mentorship, he began to blossom. His first collection debuted at a local event, and by the end of the year, his designs were being featured in national publications. "You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself," Malik told Amara one evening, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll never forget that." Amara's influence extended beyond her professional endeavors. Her personal life was equally transformed by her journey. Her relationships deepened, particularly with her best friend Naomi, who had been by her side through every triumph and setback. Together, they navigated the complexities of success, celebrating their victories while staying grounded in their shared values. One quiet afternoon, Naomi surprised Amara with a framed photo from the showcase. A candid shot of Amara on stage, smiling with tears in her eyes as the audience erupted in applause. "I wanted you to have this," Naomi said, her voice soft, "to remind you of how far you've come and how far you'll go." Amara placed the photo on her desk, right next to Zuri's letter. It became a source of strength on days when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. And though those days were rare, they reminded her that growth often came with challenges. The broader fashion industry began to take notice of Amara's impact. Major brands, once reluctant to embrace diversity, started reaching out for collaborations. While some offers were genuine, others felt like shallow attempts to capitalize on her success. Amara was selective, choosing to align herself only with partners who shared her vision for meaningful change. "I don't just want a seat at the table," she told a journalist during an interview. "I want to build a new table where everyone feels welcome." Amara's resolve caught the attention of influential figures outside of fashion as well. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and even the United Nations, where she delivered a powerful keynote on the importance of representation and equity. Her words resonated with audiences around the world, and she often received standing ovations for her ability to articulate both the struggles and triumphs of her journey. Despite her growing fame, Amara remained deeply connected to her roots. She frequently returned to Detroit, where she hosted free workshops for local youth. These sessions were as much about teaching technical skills as they were about fostering confidence and creativity. "Your story matters," she would tell the young attendees. "Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." One day, during one of these workshops, Amara noticed a young girl lingering at the back of the room. The girl, no older than 10, clutched a worn sketchbook to her chest, her eyes filled with curiosity and hesitation. Amara approached her gently, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "What's your name?" she asked with a warm smile. "Layla," the girl whispered, barely audible. "And what do you have there, Layla?" Amara asked, gesturing to the sketchbook. Reluctantly, Layla handed it over. Inside were rough sketches of dresses and outfits, each one brimming with potential. Amara flipped through the pages, nodding appreciatively. "These are wonderful, Layla," she said sincerely. "You have a gift." Layla's face lit up, and for the first time she smiled. "Do you really think so?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and disbelief. "I know so," Amara replied. "And if you keep believing in yourself, there's no limit to what you can do." That moment stayed with Amara long after the workshop ended. It reminded her of why she had started this journey: to inspire, to uplift, and to create a world where every Layla and Malik could see themselves as worthy and capable. As the years passed, Amara continued to push boundaries, both in fashion and beyond. Her collections became more daring, her initiatives more expansive, and her influence more profound. But through it all, she never lost sight of the values that had guided her from the beginning. She remained a champion for inclusivity, a mentor to those who needed a guiding hand, and a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt unseen. Looking back, Amara often thought about the day she walked into Maison Étoile. What had once felt like a moment of defeat had become the catalyst for her greatest triumphs. She no longer carried the weight of that experience as a burden. Instead, she saw it as a reminder of her strength, a testament to her ability to rise above the judgments of others and reclaim her narrative. As she stood in her studio one evening, overlooking the city skyline, Amara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had built something lasting, something meaningful, and she knew that her story would continue to inspire others for generations to come. "Everyone deserves to be seen," she whispered to herself, the words echoing in the quiet room. And with that, she returned to her work, ready to weave the next chapter of her extraordinary life. Amara Johnson's story isn't just about her journey. It's a reflection of the barriers we all face, the courage it takes to overcome them, and the power of creating space for others. It's a reminder that every individual, regardless of background, deserves to be seen, heard, and celebrated. Now it's your turn to take action. Think about the spaces you navigate daily, your workplace, community, or social circles. Are they inclusive? Do they uplift voices that often go unheard? Small actions can spark meaningful change, and it starts with asking these questions and taking steps toward a more inclusive world. If Amara's journey resonated with you, let it inspire your own. Share this story with someone who might need the encouragement to keep pushing forward. Reflect on the challenges you've faced and the ways you've grown because of them. And most importantly, commit to being a champion for representation, equity, and diversity in your own unique way. For creators, whether you're an artist, writer, or innovator in any field, take a page from Amara's book. Use your craft to tell your story and amplify the voices of others. Create with intention, lead with empathy, and don't shy away from taking a stand for what you believe in. If you're part of an industry where systemic barriers persist, ask yourself how you can help dismantle them. Can you mentor someone who's just starting out, advocate for policies that foster diversity, challenge biases within your own organization? Change starts with individuals, and every step matters. And for those who have ever felt unseen or doubted, remember, you are enough. Your voice, your talent, your dreams, they matter. Amara's story is proof that with determination and resilience, it's possible to turn moments of pain into fuel for greatness. Join the movement. Share your thoughts, your experiences, and your ideas for a more inclusive future. Comment below with your biggest takeaway from Amara's journey or the steps you're inspired to take in your own life. Let's continue this conversation and turn inspiration into action. Together, we can create a world where everyone feels empowered to claim their space and rewrite their narrative. Let Amara's story be a spark, but let the fire of change burn within all of us. Because when one of us rises, we all rise.